Episode 32 with Vickie Saunders on the 9 Point Start With a Dream podcast.
Welcome to 9 Point Started With a Dream podcast. Our goal is to showcase the stories of athletes and the community that supports them by being authentic about their journey. Here's your host, Jacoby Gillum.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This episode with Vickie Saunders, the queen of athlete sponsorship. Vickie is out in Australia, and we kind of did this interview last summer, 2018. And it was cool to just kind of hear her thoughts on the world and kind of how it's evolving and because of athlete sponsorships. You know, she breaks down a lot of misconceptions about you don't need to be, a pro athlete. You got to have like millions of followers. Just ultimately kind of how can you add value to the company with your story. And really empowering. It's really empowering. It's really inspiring as well. So I hope you take some notes, download some ebooks from that she has on her site, and let's get to it.
Well, the question I tell everyone that comes on is, when you were younger as an athlete, what was one of your bigger dreams or goals you wanted to achieve?
Hey, you know what? I wasn't really an athlete as such. I always did sport. Growing up in Australia, everybody does sport, and you do lots of sports. And for me, I played soccer, and I did horse riding, and I did everything, and I enjoyed it so much. I was never particularly ambitious in sport. That's something that I've got later in life. I've got this ambition now, and it's kind of a bit late. I'm nearly 40. But, for me, sport was just about having fun. And I've never had a life without sport. It's always been a part of my life. So important, but I never realized how important it was. And in fact, as I've got older, I've learned so much from sport. I participate in ultra marathons, and I do a combat sport. I fight. That's my sport now is Muay Thai. So I'm actually learning as I've got older so many skills and how to have these big goals and work hard for them. So yeah, I've done it a bit backwards, to be honest.
Awesome. So I guess as you kind of progressed in life, when did you realize that you wanted to be kind of part of sports more like on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good question. And I think once again, a lot of people assume because I work in the space of athlete sponsorship, as a business, we do business-to-business sponsorship, event sponsorship, sports club sponsorship, but really what we are known for and what we focus on is athlete sponsorship. I'm not a huge sports fan. I don't really watch much sport. I don't really know who's who. And there's this assumption that I'm like a sports fan and a sports freak. Actually, I'm not. I'm more about business and marketing, and I'm also about human rights. And so part of that is giving people what they need to reach their full potential and to connect with the opportunities that are around them through doing things that make them feel good about themselves and push themselves. And so, you know what I mean? It happens to be that I work with athletes, but that wasn't really the driver. The driver was, I recognized a skill set that I have in sponsorship from being in marketing and being on the other side, in the business side, and then also helping my ex-boyfriend engage his own sponsorship. And what I realized is there's so many athletes missing out on sponsorship unnecessarily. Like, there's a lot of sponsorship out there. You can call it partnerships. You can call it business relationships. You can call it anything. But, sponsorship is basically what it is. And all these athletes are missing out because they don't understand how businesses work, and they don't understand about marketing and being an ambassador and all that kind of stuff. So, for me, it's less about sport and more about people and business.
Awesome. So since you gotta say you love like the marketing and the business side of things, what made you choose sport? There's like other industries you could have went into when it comes to sponsorship. What made you choose to go the sports route?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And I think that's where my interest in sport and my understanding of sport maybe plays a role. No one's ever quite asked me that question. They usually get my typical response of, no, it's not about sport, it's about business. But you know what? I know how hard athletes work. They work hard at their sport, whether they're a middle of the pack fun runner or they're an elite javelin thrower or a gymnast or whatever their sport is, they are putting their heart and soul in, and it leaves them vulnerable, and it leaves them often in a situation of financial insecurity and stress, and this stress that they maybe can't participate in their sport to the level that they'd like to because they can't afford it, or they can't use the equipment that they want. They're running on shoes that really should have been thrown out 6 months ago, and also things like not knowing if they qualify for an event, that they might not even be able to attend it. So that insight that I have led me to really want to help and not help. We don't engage sponsorship for anyone. We never have. We're all about empowering athletes with knowledge and skills and resources to understand their own value, to connect what they need, what they want, what they've got to offer with the right companies, and engage their own sponsorship. And so, yeah, my choice of going to work directly and specifically with athletes was one of an understanding of the struggles that they go through and how amazing they are and how much value they've actually got to offer when they realize it. As I said, as a business, we do work with other clients, sports organizations and businesses and events and podcasts and all of that. And we tend to attract them. People put 2 and 2 together and they're like, oh, if you can help athletes, maybe you can help us. But we don't advertise for that. But yeah, I get goosebumps, man. Like when I did a workshop last week in Trinidad with a bunch of their Olympic and Paralympic athletes. And at the end of the day, one of the things I got them to do was to tell me one of their ambitions, some of the things that they needed to achieve that ambition, and who their ideal sponsor would be for that particular aspect. And God, some of the stuff they came up with was so creative. And at the start of the day, they were all like deer in the headlights, like, oh, we want to get sponsored, but we don't think we're good enough. And what they realized during the day was their uniqueness was exactly what they needed for their, to get sponsorship. And they all came up with these cool ideas. And I said I got goosebumps, but actually I was close to tears. I love this stuff. I love when athletes can see for themselves the value that they've got to offer.
Well, that's this then. So for anyone listening that's not sure what an athlete that's sponsored is, what is a sponsored athlete?
What is a sponsored athlete? That's a good question. A sponsored athlete is an athlete of any level, any age, any sport, any gender, any color, whatever you name it. There's no, I guess defining what an athlete is probably an important first step. You don't need to be elite. You don't need to be going to the Olympics. You don't need to be professional or even have 1 million Facebook followers. Any of the stuff that you think precludes you from being an athlete is you're mistaken. There's nothing that precludes you. If you do a sport, if you participate, you're an athlete. So then sponsorship is different to getting a donation, getting a grant, being given something with nothing in return. Sponsorship by its nature is a relationship. And so therefore there needs to be some to and fro. There needs to be an exchange. Now, for many businesses for many, many years, there was an obligation or an interest in giving money, giving product, giving support to athletes, helping them. Nowadays, it's more about investing in athletes to get a return. I don't like to see that return as being just direct sales. I think that's a bit yucky. I think athletes have actually got so much more to offer than simply being a sales rep or endorsing products. Their involvement with businesses can be in so many different ways. We can go into that a bit later possibly, but it's much more than simply creating sales. It's about customer engagement, customer experience, staff engagement and development, marketing, brand awareness, community engagement, creating social impact. It's huge. So athlete sponsorship, a sponsored athlete, really is anyone who has a relationship with a business of some sort or an organization where they're exchanging value.
Okay, exchanging value. So from people that you like work with, when it comes to like businesses and athletes and both, what has seemed like the biggest misconception between both sides when it comes to finding a way to work together?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, we do a lot of work with brands. So businesses, not just brands, but businesses who sponsor athletes. So anything from local accounting firms right through to global brands. So we've worked with ASICS Asia, Saucony. We did some work with, some local businesses in Australia. The misconception there is that athletes don't want to get involved. They think, oh, the athletes are busy. We don't want to stress them out. We don't want to give them too much to do. We'll just give them a rough idea of what we want. And then they give these athletes, oh, look, just do some social media and just, if you can maybe come along to some events. And they're very nice about it. It's very genuine. The problem is that doesn't actually give the athletes clarity. And it's the same from both sides. There's this misconception that if you're all kind of nice and easygoing, it makes the relationship better. But in reality, while you're being generous, so while the sponsors are being generous and the athletes are being generous, saying, hey, yeah, I'll do anything you want, whatever you want, they're not actually being thoughtful. So you need to be generous, but thoughtful as well. And thoughtful means thinking about what we're going to do together. What does it look like? How often does it happen? When does it happen? How many times in the year do I need to attend an event? How many times in a month should I post? And be quite specific. It doesn't need to get to the point where it's like a, line by line, you have to do everything to the letter. But certainly if both the sponsor and the athlete have got clarity on what value is being exchanged and how and when and some specifics, it keeps that relationship healthy. It manages expectations so nobody's disappointed. And it actually allows that relationship to grow and develop and for them to see the potential and to see the value being exchanged. If it's all sort of, oh yeah, we'll just do whatever, whenever, and everyone's happy, that'll fizzle out. And also people will get disappointed. They'll be like, we thought you were going to do regular social media posts. And the athlete might say, oh yeah, I was doing monthly regular posts. And the sponsor might say, oh, we meant weekly. So it's as simple as that. And unfortunately, like any relationship, once the damage has been done, once the disappointment has been created, that's kind of always going to be there. You can't quite shake that. So yeah, I reckon that's the biggest misconception. I mean, there's so many, misconceptions like only elite athletes can get sponsorship, that there's not much sponsorship out there, that you've got to play hardball when you negotiate. There's so many, but I reckon that once you do engage the relationship with a sponsor, that managing and having clarity on the relationship is probably the biggest one.
So I guess they're like you saying, like having clarity and then not, you don't have to be like the biggest name athlete. But if someone's listening that's like, they're just kind of getting started, what will be your advice on kind of getting over that mental barrier that they aren't, a big enough name to be a sponsored athlete?
Yeah. So look, if you are a famous athlete and you have millions of followers and you have a brand that everybody recognizes, fantastic. Most athletes don't, like 99.99% of athletes don't have that. So what is really important is to recognize and to identify and spend some time figuring out who you are, what you're about, what you represent, your story, your message, your values, your brand, who you are. And it then, when you look at that and then you start to look at what your sponsorship needs are and what your ambitions in life and sport, in your career, in your personal life, whatever those ambitions might be, these are kind of like jigsaw puzzle pieces, and they start to paint a picture for you. And you start to then see what kind of companies could be good sponsors for you. And if you're an athlete who isn't famous, who hasn't achieved a huge amount yet, maybe you're a non-competitive athlete and you just participate in certain events for a charity or for fitness or whatever it might be. you will then start to recognize the businesses that are potential sponsors for you based on your needs, your ambitions, your values, your personality. And when it comes to them finding value in you, more and more so, their customers, whoever their customers might be, are influenced by content marketing, stories, experiences, people who they can relate to. Not necessarily people that they're inspired by because they're winning gold medals, but people that they maybe relate to and can see, let's say you're someone who's lost weight and you now run, half marathons. Other people who want to lose weight can relate to you and be inspired by you. You don't have to be winning, but the fact that you're doing them is incredible. So, find those commonalities, find the kind of businesses who want someone like you and can make use of you in their marketing and their business activities. An interesting point, I say to some people, look, you want to get sponsored by Nike, you're not famous, that's fine. You might get famous or you might not, but you're possibly not going to get a huge profile boost through being sponsored by Nike because they do have the big names and you may just get some sponsorship, but they won't feature you in their adverts or their social media. They might do, like more and more so brands generally are starting to show the everyday athlete, someone who's overcome a hurdle, someone who's currently struggling, whatever it might be. But most likely your profile won't get boosted. However, if you go and get sponsorship from a company who is actively trying to grow, maybe they're a small business trying to get bigger, maybe they're an app or a startup company, or there's someone that features everyday athletes in their marketing activities already, that might be the way to go. If you're trying to get a bit more of a profile, going for a company that's going to give you some exposure. That's probably the best advice I could give for someone just starting out.
Awesome. So I consider you like you're like the go-to. I heard like the go-to for athlete sponsorship. So when it comes to your brand, how did you kind of work on helping, spread your name, your brand identity as a consultant, as a person of influence for this space?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we never spent money on advertising. I do things a little bit backwards. So I wrote a book before I launched my business. In fact, I wrote the book, which ended up kind of being the textbook and the guide for everything that we did afterwards. So the education program that we have online, the workshops that we run, the book was basically everything I knew about sponsorship. And it was a, step-by-step guide to getting sponsorship. So that's called Sponsorship for Athletes, of course. I like to say things as they are. So I wrote the book. I organised a seminar in Melbourne, Australia, where I used to live, and about 35 people turned up, and they told their friends, they bought books, etc. And some of the people that attended that session read the book and went and got sponsored like within the week, one the next day actually. And so on our Facebook page, which was just a page, not a group, I started sharing those stories. And I started writing blogs, and it was very organic. People came to me. I don't think we did any boosted posts for quite a long time. And people came to me because there's nobody else offering this. There was nobody else offering guidance and support and resources for the everyday athlete and the elite athlete on how they can get their own sponsorship. So word of mouth, definitely. Then, I started speaking at events. I contacted heaps of podcasts and magazines and offered to write articles and be on their podcasts. What else did I do? Yeah, lots of content on LinkedIn as well. And also, speaking at events. So contacting events and going and doing seminars for free. That really was how it got started. And then I got a call one day from the Australian Institute of Sport, and they said, we've been searching for an athlete sponsorship educator and your name comes up everywhere. This was 6 months into starting my business. And they said, your SEO rankings must be really, or your SEO settings must be really good. And I said, I don't know what SEO is. And he laughed and he said, how come your stuff's everywhere? I said, because I write a lot and I share it a lot. And I'm just busy. I engaged them as a client, and it shocked me. I was like, oh my God, the Australian Institute of Sport, like they want to work with little old me from Melbourne. And then I went, maybe there's different organizations around the world that need help as well. And guess what? There were. And I went a little crazy, as I do, and I contacted everyone. US Olympic Committee, English Institute of Sport, Sport Singapore, Canadian Institute of Sport, and they're all clients now. Not because I did a sales pitch, but because I told them, I shared stories. I shared stories of athletes who had gone through our program and had got sponsorship. So really it's been very, it's evidence-based, not results, not like, percentages of athletes sponsored or the amount of money that they've got, but the fact that they have got sponsored through going through our process. Yeah, stories and content and just being active. And, we've paid for a few Facebook posts when we've wanted to share a particular ebook or boost our database. But really, organic and word of mouth seems to be the best thing for us. And probably the same for athletes. You could, as an athlete, if you want to boost your profile, do what we did. Get active, tell people, share, tell stories, go and speak at events, speak on podcasts. Just put yourself out there. It's tiring, but do it for a while, and then the flow on will happen.
Wow, that's like putting the grind. Basically, you put in the work, and like you didn't really know where it was gonna go, but you're like, no, I just want to put myself out there. And I think that's awesome. It's like for athletes to know to kind of put yourself out there, kind of share your story.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. I did a business course for 2 years. It was brilliant while I was running my business. So it was at the start, and I paid a huge amount of money to do it. And I met so many amazing people there. It's called Thought Leaders. And it's not one of those, hey, get rich quick. It's actually, hey, do the work, and in 10 years' time, you'll probably be rich, but you're going to work your ass off before then. But it's good work. They teach you to do good content and to share content well. A lady called Jane Anderson, she said to me, hey, why don't you set yourself a challenge, like try to be, get in front of 10,000 people. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. Okay, so 3 months, 10,000 people. And so I wrote down a list of all the different ways that I could get my message to 10,000 people. So podcasts, magazines, speaking at events. And, I had to write down how many people would be at that event. So if it's 500 people, okay, if the podcast has a listenership of 20,000, so on. Ended up, the end of that 3 months, it was something like 4 million people, because I was on TV, I was on this and that, and it just gave me that challenge. So I think that's probably a good thing for any athlete or business. Like, set yourself a 10,000 eyeball or 10,000 ears challenge, so that 10,000 people will hear you or see you, and get creative with how that happens. And every person you speak to, you can tick them off, tick the list. So yeah, I think it's a nice way of doing it, setting it like a game, a challenge, rather than a chore.
I'm gonna try that then for now.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, I know you're correct on time, so I'll work toward that a little bit. But so what all are you doing now? So like people that are listening that kind of want to learn more about what you kind of doing when it comes to education for athletes or for brand. What can I find more about you guys?
Yeah, so obviously our website's probably the best starting point, which is thesponsorshipconsultants.com. We've, as a business, really grown up the last year. We spent 3 or 4 years of figuring it all out. What do people want? How do they want to, get this information? Do they want live workshops? Do they want to work online? Do they want to work in groups? And, this goes for the brands that we work with, as well as the sports organizations and the individual athletes. And what we found is it's a combination of everything. And so we've got these beautiful online programs, which are short courses, how to get sponsorship. We're just about to launch a new one on personal brand for athletes. But we've got a Facebook group. It's a free group called the Athlete Sponsorship Hub, and that is just incredible. Like, we have, I think we've got about 1,600 athletes on there, all starting or thinking about starting their sponsorship journey. And then there's a heap who've already got sponsorship. And so they're like the elder people in the group, and they're able to share their experience. And my team of experts also share their knowledge in there. So, as a business, we've got all the, the typical offerings of workshops and online programs and mentoring and consultancy. But I think, that Facebook group is probably a really great place for any athlete just to jump on and just to check it out. You've got to want this. You've got to want sponsorship. You can't be told to go and get it. And you certainly need to understand the value on offer to you beyond just the financial benefit, the gain of products and services, but actually how it can help you develop as an individual, as a professional, as someone who wants to transition into a career after sport or be an entrepreneur. Sponsorship can just open up the world for you and give you so much more than you imagine. I think that would be my advice for anyone listening, is to have a look at our website, but also to join that group, that Facebook group. Now, it's for athletes, but also we find a lot of sponsors and sports organizations jump into that group as well, because then they can observe, they can be part of the conversation, and they can share their thoughts and ideas as well. So different perspectives are really valuable. Get in touch. And we've got a podcast, and we've got blogs and things like that. So just, educate yourself and start the journey.
Definitely. That group's awesome because I'm in it, and Charlotte's on it. She's killing the game when it comes to their spine and different athletes and stuff. So props to her.
She's incredible. When I interviewed her, she's been working with us for I guess about 8 months now. When I interviewed her, I jokingly, well, not really jokingly, I said, "You're probably going to take over the company one day. You're so smart." Like she's so smart and intuitive and thoughtful and clever and creative. And, I used to think I was pretty smart. Like, honestly, I'm being really honest here. I thought I was pretty smart and pretty good at this. And then she came along and I was like, oh, okay, she's actually better than me. And I see her in that group, and I feel so blessed to have her because, like you say, the way she interacts with everyone, it's so personal yet professional. And I'm really glad that you had that, you're having that experience in the group as well. And thank you for being part of the group. Feel free to, get involved. And if you want to get people on your, in your magazine, interview them and so forth, that's part of the reason that we have that group, is to get some good connections happening. So feel free.
Definitely. Oh, definitely will do that. Well, one last question for you, Vickie. So as you kind of see, the world kind of changing when it comes to how athletes and kind of brand connect, where do you see the whole athlete sponsorship route going, or where do you see it growing to?
I love that question. Like I said before, the way that consumers are being influenced these days is much more authentic and less sales pitch and smoke and mirrors. They want real. So the relationship that a consumer has with a brand is it's emotional. It always has been, but now brands are starting to see that. And they're starting to recognize that people are influenced by people, and people connect with people, not logos. So therefore, having an athlete as a conduit, as the connector between a brand and a consumer, is just such an obvious choice. And the challenge for athletes now is to be true to themselves and not try to be somebody else. So if you're true to yourself, if you're you recognize your uniqueness, and you might think that some of the things that are unique about you are bad. They're not. They're just different. You might think that because you've got a disability, it limits you, or because you live in somewhere that's remote, it limits you, or you've got certain limitations that you perceive them as limitations. No, these things are all your uniqueness and therefore your value. And if you can recognize those and own them and stay true to them and connect with brands that you're relevant to, and you've got shared beliefs, and maybe you can relate to their audience, and their followers can relate to you. That's when the good stuff happens. If you start trying to change and be somebody else, like, oh, Kim Kardashian is doing XYZ, I'm going to do that, or an athlete's doing something different, and you try to emulate that, and it's not true to you, you'll struggle to create relationships with brands. But if you stay true to yourself, that's where a brand can recognize the alignment, and that's where the value is. So when it comes to sponsorship, that's how I see things going, just becoming more real and less about endorsements and paid opinions, and actually just real stories and real relevant connections. So we see sponsorship as actually not a separate arm of a business, but actually just part of it, an integral part of it, an authentic part of it. Less about the sales pitch and more about the human connection.
Love that.
Yeah.
You said it's all about staying true to who you are and your story. So
Yeah.
I love hearing that. Well, Vickie, it's been great having you on. I'm glad we get to do this. I know you're really traveling across the world when we're trying to put this up. So it's so great to get you on.
You have been so patient with me. Thank you so much.
I'm
so glad. So glad the internet's been good and we've had a great chat. And I really appreciate it. Your questions are fantastic. It says, I think as an interviewer, it says so much about you when you ask good questions. It's like, you're an expert in the way that you ask questions. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm learning. I'm trying error here, but I think you give so much value. So thank you again for coming on, and I'll have some links to your Facebook group and everything like that. People can go check it out. So
yeah, thank you so much. And anyone that joins, after listening to this or reading the magazine, say hi. Like shoot me a message or post in the group and say, hey, this is how I heard about the group. Because I think it's great to recognize, within our community, we've got sub-communities. So it'll be really cool to recognize those people who've come in this way.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and I'll let you enjoy the rest of your night and get ready for that fight.
Yeah. Glad to have you in my corner.
I'm there for sure.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
You too. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Yo, thanks for listening to this episode of the 9 Point Started With a Dream podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, leave a review. We would love to hear your thoughts. You can find more athlete-driven content at 9point.com. Till the next episode, you're only one opportunity away. Peace.